We want to welcome Carlo Francisco, the director of the amazing Whether the Weather is Fine. Truly, truly an achievement of a film. So, Carlo, tell us a bit about the genesis of Whether the Weather is Fine. Just tell us about how it came about, maybe when did you first start writing it till you started shopping the screenplay?
Yeah. I think even before the storm happened, which was 2013, I was already writing by myself something. It was actually also a story about a mother and son with a tragedy, not a storm, but with a different tragedy. I felt during that time it was complete, but at the same time it was not. And I was trying to really find what was missing. And then the storm happened. I experienced it. I was trying to find my family, la la la. Very harsh moment during that time. And then I felt it was actually a traumatic experience to the point that slowly I had like these like thoughts of what had happened. I would be emotional randomly, and then I realized um maybe a thing that was missing when what I was writing was me in it.
Hmm.
And then I think when me and Giancarlo Abrahan, one of the co-writers, started meeting up, I started really opening up about the experience, which was quite, in a way, therapeutic to say the least.
Yeah.
It felt lighter. I think more than anything, the slower I was telling the story, at least of my experience, the better I was feeling. And then the better the film was taking shape. So I think
Mm.
what was missing was me in it. And then yeah, I mean, slowly we were developing it without thinking of how it is right now in its final form. We were supposed to actually shoot the film way, way, way back. It was supposed to be part of this local film festival.
Mm.
So I did not really have dreams of like getting it out there with all these institutions giving funds and whatsoever. I just really wanted to make the film, but I think the more than the funding that was given to the film, I think the years that it took me to develop and make it made me how to say a bit it gave a different flavor to the film. If I shot this way way earlier, it could have been a more melodramatic film, but
Right.
in between developing the film, and then I was working as an editor, and then I was also doing shorts in between. I think
Mm.
all these practices while I was really just journeying with making the film made the film how it is right now. I mean, I think with the shorts that I was doing, it really helped in terms of what kind of cinema I really wanted to make. Slowly I mean, just for the lack of a better term, slowly being confident in terms of like the kind of
Mm.
storytelling and narrative I really want to pursue. So yeah, it took a
Yeah.
while, like 7, 8 years, I think, mainly
Yeah.
because of money and other things. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, but I think writing takes time. And like you
yeah,
said that
and
you yeah, yeah, it takes time. And I think every year we're changing and we're growing. And you know and if you needed that time for it to gestate to this point,
yeah,
yeah, I think it was probably meant to happen for a reason, you know.
but
Yeah.
also I'd like to state a point where which I always say, I'm a bad writer. So I think more than the funding and the writing, it's me because sometimes like it's not how I do stuff. Like most of the time, like my shorts are more visuals rather than
Right.
like written stuff. It's sometimes it feels independent even in parts of sequences. So it took me a while to really just find the right momentum in terms of writing. That's why also I was working with Giancarlo, and then eventually I collaborated with a French writer as well. So yeah.
I see. So in total, there were three writers for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
project.
So
Yeah.
so it started with me, and then Gian
Mm,
and me, and then in between me alone, and then towards, because technically we wanted to submit to some foreign French funds,
yeah,
so we got a French writer on board. So
I
it's
see.
easier, lesser how to say, like communication for translation and whatsoever. So it was okay.
I see. And how
And
was
then
that?
and
Yeah.
I think the experience really, it was really different, because like for me, in terms of like how it was being written, it was very personal. And you have Gian, who's also Filipino, who knows the culture, but also knows about the impact the storm has caused. Not, he's not from Tacloban, but he has experienced this all through his life in his own hometown. And in a way also the personal part where we are very good friends. So in terms of like really understanding me as
Yeah.
a filmmaker, it was really good and
Yeah.
very different as well. And then working with the French, it was a different process because there was already a story, there was already something, but mainly the good thing to come out of like working with Jeremy was really just questioning stuff, mainly because
Mm,
he doesn't have that much vast knowledge about Asian culture or like
yeah.
Filipino culture in general. So there was like lots of questioning and a different point of view of somebody who doesn't know what was happening but only sees the material as it is. So it was really nice. A lot of process in the writing was more of like questioning and asking and going back and forth rather than really thinking about
Sure.
scenes and stuff. So it was a nice mix of talents, to say the least, for really just putting up in to what the film is right now.
Nice. And I would guess that it was you setting the themes, like you deciding, like
Yeah, yeah.
thematically this is what you wanted the film to be about. So like I said, I think the film is wondrous, and it's got a lot of scale and a lot of imagery. And like of the natural world, religious imagery, the animal world, and this sort of like
Mm,
apocalyptic um fantasy realm. And then you have three primary characters, right? And of course, Miguel, I would say, is the primary protagonist, but
uh,
Norma and Andrea have you know very strong threads as well. So
mm.
it was, this is quite a feat to write. So I want to ask, when you started thinking about the themes of the story, what were some of the themes that were important to you and your co-writers that you really wanted to come across?
Well, the main concern actually more than anything, even not just in writing, but even also during the shoot,
Hmm.
and I was really, how to say, conscious about it. I didn't want that the topic of the typhoon, which I have experienced many times in my life, and the thing that happened during 2013, I mean Typhoon Haiyan, and I'm using it as a story. I didn't want more than anything to feel that when people watch it, I'm exploiting the fact that this had happened, you know? Like I'm just
Sure.
really just juicing out stories from all of this because more than anything, I came from there. I was born and raised there.
Mm,
My family experienced it. I experienced it myself. So
mm,
mainly because I think this is not the kind of like film that talks about something of a tragedy.
yes,
Maybe people would see something as this, if it's tragedy, it should be tragic, should be melodramatic and whatnot.
sure.
But I think personally it was my reinterpretation of how tragedy is in the eyes when I was there and I didn't
Mm,
really know what was really happening. More than anything, the film mainly is, regardless of its understandability, I feel it's more, I'm more gunning for a more experiential approach.
mm,
You know, this feeling of nothingness and just like being aimless, but also like, you know, trying to go towards something, but you really don't know what would happen.
sure.
A lot of things, a lot of themes that came out of the film was actually themes that I saw during when I was there. I just feel like religion as an institution, which people in a way would just, you know, like I think during tragedy, money is not even a currency.
Yes. Yes.
everyone is on the same level
Yeah.
regardless if you're down there or you're up there or whatsoever. And I think I experienced and I saw like people tend to cling onto religion when more than anything they don't
Mm,
have anything anymore.
mm,
So these superficial and not superficial actually, very defined themes, especially the Philippines being a more Catholic country,
yeah.
just believing in something to hope for something which you don't know what's gonna happen,
Mm,
but at least it's the thing that you just see right now for something
mm,
to just really move forward, or we don't know if you do. So I don't know. Those are little things, and like
mm,
themes of absurdity. Sometimes people, or maybe the audience, could feel, "What the fuck is this? It's so weird." Something
yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
But that's how I felt when I was there.
Sure. I'm
Like,
sure.
what the
Yeah.
fuck?
Yeah. And that was the one thing that struck me, and and you've articulated it, that um, although it's set, sort of the aftermath of a typhoon, it's a very different type of, like you said, it's not a disaster film. Ultimately, I saw it as a family drama. I
It
think
is.
it's like
It
a
is. It
yeah,
is.
it was a family
It
drama
is.
set in the backdrop of the typhoon, and essentially the family had everything wiped out, and they wanted to start. This was my interpretation. They wanted to start clean. You
Uh,
know,
uh,
Norma wanted to search for Louise. And Miguel was kind of in this daze, but I felt that he wanted to bring his family back together, and he wanted to have a more serious relationship with Andrea, and he wanted to bring the family together. So I felt that was very clear to me, and I really liked that. So I wrote here that I felt that now they had survived, they had to figure
mhm.
out what makes life worth living for, right?
It's
Now that
like
they've survived.
um maybe I think the more proper one is like, you know, it ends, but then what more? What now?
Yeah. What now?
Yeah.
So I want to talk about the ending now. So in the end, Miguel leaves on the boat without Norma or Andrea. And obviously, Andrea's found her place, right? And
Yeah, yeah,
unfortunately, Norma did not find Louise. And it's this really sad moment because we kind of really want her to find Louise, right? Um,
or
and
do you really? No, I'm kidding.
I wanted her to find Louise. I felt, yeah. But you kind of get the sense that what's the point, because he didn't come to look for that. Well, I mean, we don't know what happened to him, but he's moved on with his life and he's got this whole
Yeah,
new life, right? But
yeah.
Norma can't let go of him, and but it's just the moment that you set up when she's at the Astrodrome and you see that man's back and he turns around and he's a young guy, and
Mm.
I just felt it was so well done um, by the actors, and I really felt for Norma, and then in the end she's kind of at the fireworks, and it's, I mean, it's what people want to make of it. Maybe she's made peace, or maybe something has snapped and she cannot
Yeah,
go back. You know,
yeah.
um, but I want you to talk a bit. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about Miguel leaving on the boat, because the end of his expression at the end is kind of incongruous. He's not happy. He's not sad. One could say that maybe he's worried, and I think it's a really interesting ending. And there are people surrounding him, and he sort of turns, and then you cut there. Just tell us a bit
Mm.
about, just talk through that ending a little bit if you can.
Yeah, I think not just Miguel's ending, but all three endings. I think
Yeah.
all the characters ends were trying to find their piece of their concept of home, I feel. So
Okay.
for me, it's like, home is not literally a house. Like
Yeah.
for instance, like Andrea's home was basically her being up there, her just really surviving and
Yeah.
like really performing, I mean, ever
Yeah.
since she's
Yeah.
been singing on all these things. But when she's there, she has left Miguel and Norma. She had achieved what she wanted, like her dream, her home mainly. But is she really at home? Like you don't really feel if
Yeah.
she took in everything. I think the concept of Norma's home was more of like with the storm, trying to find like making positive things about what had happened. She feels like because of the storm, maybe her ex-husband would really try to find them and their family be reunited.
Yes.
And
Yes.
in a way, her home was family, but
Yeah.
did she really had home? I think with Miguel, home was more of like the same as normal, but at the same time, his home was his freedom. But
Mm.
when he achieved his freedom, is he really home?
Yeah.
So all these things in a sense where they achieved what they really wanted at the end, but does it really feel as if this is what they wanted? Since the
Yeah.
film goes as if it ends there, but it's not really. It hasn't ended. It's just the start of their new journey towards what home means to them. So
Yeah. And Miguel does, in the tattoo parlor scene, he talks
yeah, yeah,
about his dad, and we get the
yeah.
sense that there's this big hole in him,
Yeah. And that's the
and
only time where the film has logical dialogues.
right.
No, no, no. Yeah. I mean, like more than anything, all three endings, it was supposed to be. I wanted to give the characters what they really wanted in terms of how they journeyed towards
Yeah.
it. But then I felt grounding myself. Do they really want this? Is it
Yeah.
something very, how to say, just spur of the moment feeling because you're in this place where everything is destroyed and home is like all houses are gone. But then you realize when you are there, do you really want this, or is this what you really want? So it's always a question, even up until it ends.
Okay. So now, Carlo, I want to talk a little bit about the visualization, because the film is a real visual spectacle and treat. Um, for me, it's everything from the way it was shot. And just to shout out to Lim Teck Siang, the Singaporean DP, who I think did a really fantastic job on the
Definitely,
film.
yes.
It's really amazing. And from the costumes to the set design, um, and right for me, right down to the color grade, because I love the color grade as well. I think the grade was really, really nice for the film. Um, and I want to talk a little bit about the cinematography first. Okay, so you made an interesting choice to go 4:3,
Yeah.
and you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I just feel with films like with the scope and that talks about natural disaster or tragedy, it's always a thing where they mainly focus on what was destroyed
Yeah,
and what had happened. But I feel more than anything, the film is a story, it's a family story.
yeah,
It's the journey of these three characters, and I didn't want what had happened or the tragedy to really just um not focus on the journey. So I made it in a way framed as if you're just focusing on the character's journey as if they're moving and like really just going around rather than how to say displaying the vastness
yeah,
of the destruction,
yeah.
mainly
That really came
because
across. Yeah,
the film is already talks already about a post disaster, and I don't need to really just state it more
yeah,
in this kind of film with not so much dialogue and not so much things going on. So I just want at least the audience to focus on their on their journey towards going to wherever, and it's more character centric. So that was one of um
mm,
the decisions to be made. That's why I made I we me and Tech really decided to just frame it in 4:3. But also there's another how to say reason,
hmm.
mainly because it was also budget concerns. No, but I mean, like more than anything, yes, budget concerns, but more than anything, I just wanted it to be character centric rather than really focus on the destruction because the destruction and the devastation would always be there since it's a film about it,
Sure.
and then it's just there. It would be there regardless of where they're stated, like they're sitting somewhere else. You get the feel of it. They're set there, so I don't need to really just expand that with
Yeah.
visuals.
No, I think this is the first film of this scale that I've seen in this format. And I think it worked really well, especially for me personally, for the top shots. Like I
Yeah,
felt in
yeah,
the top shots, the choreography of how you place the extras, it actually I felt that it was so much more effective in this format for the top shots. Like I felt I could really zoom in on the mise en scène that you're trying to talk about, right?
yeah.
And interesting that you one of the first things I noted when I saw the film was I said what I really liked about it is I feel very close to the characters in spite of the fact that there are so many things going around them. Yeah. And one scene in particular that I thought was very well blocked and shot was Norma by the beach. And there are these two men fighting in the background, you know?
Uh,
And so
uh,
you know that there's this chaos going around her, but you're always with her.
Question also actually of how to really manage to show the scale in terms of like a film like this, because I think for instance, what I imagined, if it's like this, it should have been like really implanted in the first part of the film. But we do the big shots, this wide destruction shots on parts where you don't expect the wides could be seen.
Yeah.
You know, like it's the for big parts I don't show, but then you realize for somewhere else it goes big, and it feels really different because you have been really enthralled in like just all these close-ups and medium shots and really following, and then you see the vastness, and then you
Yeah.
realize, oh shit, it's a tragic event again, you know? Like
Yeah.
it's you have all these absurdities and weird moments and mundane moments, but then it makes you realize you go back to how it is really, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I'll never forget that kid on the beach. This is a slightly earlier scene, and she had this blue hair, and then she was doing yeah, I that just cracked me up. I really like that kid. I don't know, she was having so much fun. She looked like she was having so much fun doing that.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
that
like
was
I think and on a surface level, it's funny. They're having so much fun, but in a way, the kids are mainly the representation of the future.
yeah,
To be less, I mean, not being dramatic of some sorts, but like if you see it, the adults are much more, in a way, savage and animalistic, and the kids are the one who's much more stable in terms of like just they actually don't know the vastness of the effect of what had
yeah.
happened.
Let's talk a little bit about the set design because especially the
Uh,
subterranean, the subterranean spaces. And I thought the lighting was amazing, especially the use of candles and just that nice contrast between the very cold and very warm, um, use of light. So can you just talk a little bit about the design of those sets?
the
Because there were
design.
quite a few. Yeah,
So in a way, and this is always a question that really spurts out during like people asking me or like
yeah.
Q&As and stuff. Um, in essence, 90% of the film was built from scratch.
Wow.
So, and people would ask me how is it possible? Mainly because the storm happened 2013. We really wanted to shoot in Tacloban, but every time we go to the places where I feel should have been shot, the film should have been shot, it's practically rebuilt. You don't feel
Mm,
that there was a storm that really just arrived and like kicked over the whole archipelago or like the place. So we had no choice but to really build them from scratch. But there were non-negotiable scenes where I really wanted to go back to Tacloban and shoot things.
mm,
And these are like the iconic places, which is the Astrodome. And the
yeah,
Astrodome has been very iconic mainly because it was a place where the relief center was happening during the real typhoon.
yeah,
And it was the only place that was really there ever since the start. All others, the arcade, the exteriors, it was built from scratch. So
amazing,
it's
amazing.
crazy, but also reference wise, very nice friend of mine, Wami, who's the production designer of the film. We would be sending out photos. I sent him like photos when I was there, and a lot of it, even though it was built from scratch, were referenced from real ones. And we wanted, for me at least, I wanted it to make authentic looking as
Yeah,
possible.
yeah,
To the tiniest details of like little props that we saw in pictures, we would add up. Of course, not
yeah,
everyone would in a way just really get it or like would even care, but like at least for us, it was like a little, like little hidden Mickeys on our head, just putting things
and making us feel that we actually did something really, I mean, like at least right and authentic looking as much as we could.
Yeah. One of the scenes that I really love is, and it's very, very early in the film, it's the minute that he gets up from the rubble that Miguel wakes. And then he walks
Ah,
past a space, and then people are worried that another typhoon is coming, that they're running in the opposite direction that he's walking. And
yeah,
my sister was who's a doctor, volunteered during the tsunami, and she went to
ah,
Sri Lanka, and
uh,
something similar happened to her. She said that there were all these false stories being spread that another tsunami was coming, and they were running away from the camps, and she was
uh,
trying to get people to come back. um but I just I mean, I like that scene so much. And it's true, I think when people are disorientated, and also it's they, when they hear the news, they just take it that it's true,
yeah.
you know
And I think like what you're saying right now and what we're discussing, it doesn't really just happen during like calamities or like disasters. It happens right now in real life, like at
yeah,
present time, like authorities would say something and it's not true, but then
yeah,
realize it is or not so much. So there's also a play on like misinformation,
yes, and
like the whole film,
irresponsibility, yeah,
yeah,
and
and the whole
irresponsibility of
film, the
authority.
whole film
Yeah,
has a character of this voice of God the whole time. You hear all
yeah,
these announcements, but every
yes,
time it does come up, it's always a different one from the last thing that he said. So,
yeah,
like even the authorities don't really know what they
us
are they
dealing with,
need to do
yeah,
or like
and they,
yeah,
like
yeah,
it's,
yeah.
they're not even, and that's why you had that one guy speaking gibberish, right? It's hilarious. Hilarious. That was so, and he was so good. The guy who did it, he just went for it. He was like, okay, speak Klingon. Okay, I'll do it. Yeah. You know. But I thought that was clever. And funny that now it just, that thought came to me, Carlo, that kind of, there's a parallel between that and Luis, because we never see Luis, right? And
Yeah,
Luis left the family and he's got his own thing,
yeah.
but
But he's
he's also
everly
this,
present.
he's omnipresent, and he's kind of also this irresponsible figure, because he punched a hole in the family. You managed to keep us very present with your main cast, even though that
Uh,
it's a scale, it's a film of scale, right? And
mm,
you keep us very present with the main cast at all times. So just simple things like that, I thought was really, really nice. But yeah, so many shots that I like. But really, the Astrodome Zumba, that really killed me. That I really love. That I really love. And just getting all of them to, because they were actually following the Zumba dancers, right? Because there were like these 3 or 4 Zumba dancers.
yes.
Yeah, they were actually,
And we I mean as mentioned we shot it in Tacloban and all these extras are locals.
right.
So
So they
in a
lived it.
way they live there, they survived the storm.
Yeah, they lived it.
So more than
Yeah,
anything, yes, it is funny, it's entertaining, but at the same time, I think more than anything it's really heartbreaking, but at the same time, in a way, it's a celebration of life.
exactly. Celebrating their survival. They
Yeah,
made it.
yeah,
They made
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. Okay, let's talk now about the music. So the music is a big driving force in the film, right?
Is it? No, I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah, just a little. It's a big driving force in the film, and then it sort of crescendos at the end with with Andrea's song, when she's become Saint Andrea, right? Or the miracles, the miracle of Andrea. So just talk a bit about the choices that you made, and and it's got this kind of pop, very very uplifting. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, mainly because how I felt during that time. Number one, of course, I wanted to veer away from the fact that it's tragedy and you need to
yeah,
have like sad music, you
yeah,
know? I feel the whole journey of the characters is quite very whimsical, to say the
yeah,
least.
yes,
And I wanted that texture not just to be created in terms of the visuals and even the performance, but I wanted it to transcend in sound and in music.
mm,
And it was when we were starting, there were like a few debates of why I wanted this kind of music. It was more of like why would it fit the film? And independently when you hear the music, it's nice, and then you realize you put it in a film like this. So
Mm,
it was mainly a discussion of how and why, but then I realized minus the whimsical elements, it's a fleeting feeling of how the characters are, and even the playfulness of the film,
yeah.
of in an event where it's actually quite sad. And also more than anything, a lot of music used, not just the scores, but also like the music tracks. It's also an ode to like Filipino pop culture in general.
Mm, mm,
The music tracks used were not just Filipino, but specifically like the Waray music scene. Those
mm.
songs that were actually used were actually local songs from my region, and
Nice.
usually it's never used in films, and I feel there's like lots of like like the good artists and materials that like I come from the Philippines, I come from my region, but like other people have not heard of, mainly because it's always Manila centric. I don't have
Yeah.
problems with
Sure.
it being like Manila centric. I do get that, but more
Yeah.
than anything, a lot of stories, a lot of artworks or like works by artists are not mainly focused mainly because we're not from the center of the Philippines. And I wanted to give an ode to all these artists who are doing beautiful things
Yeah.
and not being recognized. And also it was an added trivia when we were getting the rights of the film. A few songs, the Zumba track
Yeah.
where they're really
Yeah.
dancing, we got the rights, and apparently the artist actually died during the storm. So you have this
Oh man.
different levels of
Yeah.
like what why I wanted these tracks. I didn't know that he was part of this struggle of the destruction of the typhoon, but it was more of like a more personal approach of me growing up to these songs, like being part of a bigger pop culture, and then just really reintroducing the vastness of music, and not just music, and even in things in general, in terms of like the forms used in the music. But then again, I realized like these are people who actually also experience the storm, and a few music used also like towards the end when Andrea was singing with
Yeah.
the lighting microphone.
Yeah.
It wasn't really part of the screenplay, but more than anything, I wanted to play on mainly because in my head it's like maybe this would be my first and last film, so I'd play on
Not
everything
be
that
your
I.
last,
No,
dude. Hardly.
I'm just saying,
But
I'm just
but
saying, I'm just
of
saying,
course.
I'm
But
just
every
saying.
time we make a film, it feels like it's going to be the last because it
Yeah,
almost
yeah.
kills us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I said like I wanted to create layers, at least in a way, at least
Yeah.
I it's not explained, but at least on my end I did something. So I,
Yeah.
more than anything, like the characters and the actors, I wanted them to be part of the film as
Yes.
them, not just the characters. Like the song used when Andrea was singing, it was a song that towards the end of the shooting days, I was asking Daniel, when he was living in Tacloban, which song reminded him of home, of like when he was young. So she said the song is the title is SM, and he said like he every time this plays, it reminds him of when he was growing up in Tacloban. So we got the rights. I
Mhm.
translated it to my dialect, Korai, and I had Andrea sing it. And Daniel doesn't know this. He hasn't watched the film.
He hasn't seen
Uh,
it. Oh
He
my.
hasn't seen the film. He hasn't seen the scene. And Charo Santos, I wanted an ode to her perform to her being an actress in the classic film. So there was a scene where she was just roaming around the house
Yeah.
that never was.
Yeah.
It was an ode. It was almost the same in terms of shots when she was doing like an old film titled Itim.
Mm.
And then Andrea, because she was part of this girl
Pop
group,
band. Yeah.
up band. So she was shocked when she was doing the singing part towards the end. I had all the people carry light sticks. So there's this
Wow.
little things that
Yeah.
wasn't really part of how it was planned, but then you realize I
When
just
the actors came in, they added
yeah,
that
you,
element.
you have
Yeah.
this synergy of all the
Yes.
elements of not being just the character, the actor, but being also themselves as human beings and being part of the
Yeah.
film. So
That's
yeah,
wonderful. Okay, with that, Carlo, thank you so much. We're going to
thank you
end
very
this
much.
Q&A. I just want to say a huge congratulations on your film. I was inspired. I was moved, and just so enjoyed it so much, and honored that I could conduct this Q&A. Thanks so much again, Carlo, and it's been an honor. Okay, and we can't wait for your
Thank
next
you,
project. Okay, take care. Bye.
thank you.